Okay, family, how is everyone doing? I hope that you are well. I hope that you are safe, protected wherever you may be with a sharp mind and a rebellious spirit. We are definitely going to get started today. I have a couple stories that I want to cover. One is going to be fairly quick, and the other one is going to be, consume the vast majority of this video. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is the victory of Wesley Bell. He ousted Bob McCulloch of Ferguson notoriety. He ousted him last night in a rout of a victory in St. Louis to become the new prosecuting attorney. And he's going to be unchallenged. So this is his victory now. This is his position now. He's not going to have any type of general election opponent or anything like that. So I want to read to you guys something from the St. Louis Post Dispatch. Talking about the victory. It says Robert McCulloch's 28-year run, 28 years doing all sorts of damage in St. Louis County. He has been his reign of terror has ended. Okay, Tuesday night when he was upset by Ferguson's councilman who promised to reform the criminal justice system. Wesley Bell, 43, earned 57% of the vote in the Democratic primary according to unofficial results. With no candidate from any other political party in the race, Bell will run unopposed in November, which pretty much means he has that position. No one's going to challenge him for that position. Okay? And it shows with 100% of the precincts reporting, Wesley Bell got over 100,000 votes compared to Robert McCulloch's or Bob McCulloch's 78,000, nearly 79,000 votes. This is great news. This is proof that voting matters. This is proof of why voter suppression is such a necessary tactic for the right wing. I'm not saying it's necessary in terms of democracy itself. It's a bane on democracy. It's a threat to democracy. But this is why the right wing engages in voter suppression as staunchly and as aggressively as they do. Okay, to prevent stuff like this from happening all across the country. Okay, and this is how we need to get at the criminal justice system. This is the tactic that we need, well, at least one of the tactics that we need to employ. Outside of just protesting, which is, has varying degrees of success. I think at this point, protesting is only necessary to allow the public to vent and to show the powers that be that certain acts that they commit on the public or certain things that they do to the public won't be supported. So I've always been critical of people who say, oh no, we shouldn't protest or we shouldn't vote. No, you're honestly just laying down your arms. You're not doing anything essentially. And if enough people listen to voices out there who say politics is a waste of time, voting is a waste of time, we shouldn't vote, we should just focus on businesses and focus on our money and things like that, then people like Bob McCulloch stay in power. And we don't want that because that's not helping black people. That's not helping the people of St. Louis who have to live under that terroristic rule. And it shows that it tells cops, corrupt cops, that you'll be protected regardless because the people won't do anything about it. The people aren't going to fight against the establishment because they're going to allow these people like Bob McCulloch to stay in power. Okay, so you can continue doing what you want to do, but then it also tells the Bob McCullochs of America that hey, you can engage in these open, blatant, public cover-ups. Okay, the Ferguson cover-up was one of the worst cover-ups in American history, and it should go down that way. Okay, so the first chance that people got, they got him out of office. Okay, so Wesley Bell, is a Democrat prosecutor for St. Louis County. Here's what he ran on. He ran on ending mass incarceration and reforming cash bail. Okay, he He wants to target crime that matters most. He wants to engage the community to build trust through transparency. I talk all the time about transparency and accountability, and how that's lacking in the judicial system. I don't even want to call it a criminal justice system because there's not a whole lot of justice there. Okay, especially when it comes to crimes against the population by the state. Okay, there's not a whole lot of justice there. Justice, for all intents and purposes, is non-existent. Okay, so transparency and accountability is incredibly important. So then he wants to also end the death penalty. That's also important. And most importantly, he wants to resist the Trump administration. Now, that's a good thing. Hold on, my phone is going off. I need to silence my phone while I'm recording. Resisting Trump is good, but it's important that other policy positions are put, on the front, are put out there as most important, because you're probably not going to win just on resisting Trump, because it's too easy for establishment politicians to just be against Trump, but they want to maintain the status quo in terms of policy, and that's not what we need right now. We don't need these fake faux resistors. Okay, we need people who resist Trump and his agenda, yes, but then they're also progressive on policy, and that's what Wesley Bell is. I'm glad he won. Let me see if there's anything else from this article that's important to. Oh yeah, I do want to mention this. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can find it. This was the first time McCulloch had faced a challenger since the Ferguson protests that erupted over the killing of Michael Brown by a Ferguson police officer, Darren Wilson, in 2014, August of 2014. Protesters criticized his office for handling the grand jury, for its handling of the grand jury inquiry into the killing of Brown. The grand jury brought no charges against Officer Darren Wilson, which we all know that. One of the worst public displays of corruption within the judicial system that I have ever seen in my life. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, we've seen many examples of that since then. Of course, we saw examples of that before Mike Brown with Trayvon Martin, for decades, quite frankly. But I think people thought Ferguson was going to be different because there was so much attention being given to it. Okay, and whereas a lot of other cases, that a lot of other cases are equally bad. In some cases are even worse than what happened in Ferguson. But they don't get as much attention. So the thinking was that, okay, it might be a little bit easier to cover some of these things up because people aren't really paying attention to it. Everybody was paying attention to Ferguson, so everybody thought the public pressure was going to create a different outcome. Okay, and that clearly didn't happen. Okay, and we saw what happened in the aftermath of that decision. All of that rests squarely on the shoulders of Bob McCulloch. Everything that happened after that decision by the grand jury, that rigged decision by the grand jury, everything that happened afterwards was purely Bob McCulloch's fault. There's no one else that should be blamed. Now you can say, okay, well, people shouldn't have done that. People shouldn't have burnt stuff up and stuff like that. I don't want to condone that. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, none of that stuff would have happened if you had a transparent instead of a behind closed doors, secretive grand jury process. None of that would have happened in terms of the burning of Ferguson if Bob McCulloch hadn't have rigged that process and used the grand jury to rig the process against the family of Michael Brown and to protect a killer cop. None of that stuff would have happened. So, yes, you might be able to blame the aggravators a little bit, but most of that blame goes squarely on Bob McCulloch's shoulders. Point blank, period. That's my position, at least. I'm sure, if some conservatives and some right-wingers might be watching this video right now, you might have a different opinion, to which I don't really care. This is my channel, not yours. So, so one last thing that I want to mention It says here in this article, it says political observers gave Bell little chance, saying that McCulloch's 28 years in office and fundraising advantage made it nearly impossible for Bell to win. That we need to stop listening to these political prognosticators. Okay, a lot of these quote unquote observers who make these positions are making their or who make these predictions. I said positions. A lot of these observers who are making these predictions are doing so from somewhat from an establishment perspective. Okay, so they're assuming that these progressive policy positions aren't going to play with the quote unquote middle America. Okay, and they continue to be proven wrong. Okay, so yeah, don't listen to these observers, people who say, "Oh, this person doesn't have too much of a chance to win. That person, because they're taking this policy position, you're not going to win." Don't listen to that stuff. That's noise put out there to, honestly, in my opinion, depress the vote. Okay, so people don't turn out to vote for actual progressives. Okay, so yeah, that's all I wanted to say about this story. Continue to vote, especially in November. You have to believe that you can change the system. Okay, this is the big problem I have with people who tell people not to vote. Okay, you're creating a mindset in the public that leads people to believe that they can't force change, and I don't believe that. I believe change is very hard. I believe change is very difficult. I believe you will lose sometimes. There will be progressives who will lose. Okay, but you have to look at the trends. You have to look at the demographics and where demographics are going in this country. You have to look at how voter suppression is being used to suppress the vote, and why that's being done. It's being done because of the trends. It's being done because the newer, younger generations, the millennial generations, people are becoming more and more progressive as capitalism is clearly failing to provide for the average American. So as capitalism is failing, as upward mobility is failing, as options are being taken away from people, as people's paychecks are getting smaller and smaller, have people looked at their paychecks recently to see what's being taken out? You know, I mean, so as all of these things are happening, as people are struggling more and more and finding it more and more difficult to survive in this environment, okay, it's forcing people to embrace DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. It's forcing people to embrace, really strong progressive Democrats. Okay. And so the establishment, the right wing, the neoliberals, they see where things are going and they don't like where things are going because it's a threat to their power. Okay, so I say all of this to say that yes, change is hard. Yes, you have to get out there. You have to actually believe that you can win. Okay, and in replacing Bob McCullough's, but replacing the Bob McCulloughs of America isn't just about replacing them with other establishment prosecutors, other prosecutors who are going to get in and do what they do. No, it's about replacing them with people who actually have legit progressive credentials. Okay, so in which Wesley Bell is part of, part of that. He's consistent with that. He's representative of that. So I'm going to end this video here. Definitely hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'm going to go and get started on my next video, which is going to be about Alex Jones finally being deplatformed. So definitely watch that video, which should be posted next after this one. Oh, and by the way, check out my blog at www.blackandintellectual.com.